So welcome, Rob, to Raw and Cooked Vegan. And if you could, for the viewers, Rob, tell us a little bit about your history, like growing up. Was your family at all conscious of diet, fitness? What was that like?
Yeah, so I am lucky. I have a close family, two older sisters, mom and dad who are been married since they were in their early 20s, still together. We all live close together. Growing up was very much the same. My family, the healthy part was we got along, we loved each other, we had camaraderie, we loved movement and dancing and sport and laughter. The not so great part was that my mom was traditional and made basically dinner for us every night, breakfast for us every morning, and it was always some type of, starch, some type of animal product, and some type of vegetable, usually everything with butter. She did her best. The food tasted good, and I think if I would have stuck only with mom's cooking, I might have been less worse than I was. But in middle school and high school, I started really eating a lot of fast food due to just being real busy. I played sports in high school and middle school, and I was always kind of fit looking, so I always thought I'm healthy. I can eat whatever I want. I'm one of the lucky people.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the end of college. I played baseball in college, so it was the same thing, always working out. Ate horrible in college. I'm talking absolutely horrible, along with, smoking a ton of weed, using experimental drugs, drinking as much as I possibly could. So I hit my unhealthy peak in my early 20s.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have a very, it's not a crazy story. It's pretty American.
Yeah.
Got out of college. By 25, my body was basically riddled with different medical crises. I had a shoulder that I needed surgery on due to weird arthritis stuff. I had IBS, I had acid reflux, and worst of all, I had basically dermatitis all over my sternum, face, scalp, and a little bit on my hands.
Wow, and you were 25?
Yeah, about 24, 25 is when it started, and probably by 26, it was pretty full-fledged and keeping me out of regular life, basically.
Wow, man.
And at that point is when I found Western medicine to be very harmful and make things worse, on top of not addressing my lifestyle, what I was eating at all. So,
and was part of that, Rob, that they were prescribing you medications that were having like side effects and not really solving the problem?
They were, and it was kind of twofold, meaning they were prescribing me medications like steroid creams and antacid pills that, as you know, they address the surface issue, but they don't ever really do anything to help the root cause balance itself out. They never ask, why is this happening? They just say, what do you have and what pill lines up on the chart to give you? And so I got worse and worse and finally stumbled into, of all people, the model from a Madonna video, Yogi Cameron. And he's an Ayurvedic, very famous, very awesome Ayurvedic practitioner. And I kind of started following him. That got me onto the alternative medicine scene. And then I found nutrition, basic, simple nutrition, finally, maybe 3 years into that kind of like reaching in the dark for answers on my own.
And would you define that, like when you say base general nutrition, just like eating fresh food, like probably were you vegan? Were you going vegan, vegetarian, or was it more like just healthy foods, fresh food, that sort of thing?
So right off the bat, I was kind of doing an Ayurvedic-based diet, and they use clarified butter. They use things like raw milk, and that got me to a certain point. You know what I mean? the dairy for me and the animal products, looking back now, I see that made a world of difference. Once I kind of eliminated oils and animal products and was really focused on eating whole foods as much as possible, things rapidly started reversing for me. And now they've gotten to the point where all the dermatitis and all of the health issues are completely a thing of the past for about almost 4 years now.
That's
and
awesome.
As I age, I'm inching towards 40, and my health, my muscularity, my athletic ability keeps actually improving. So I'm kind of always a student and always astonished about how simple living can really be dramatic.
Well, man, it looks like you're in pretty good shape. Let me ask you this: before you kind of got educated, and you were, playing baseball, doing kind of, maybe the average American kind of sports lifestyle, did you look at veganism as kind of some far out whack thing? That's something I would never do. What was your attitude toward that?
I've always been, even as what I would consider definitely like a jock.
Yeah.
I was always very interested, kind of in counterculture, in dance and movement, and kind of art. And so, luckily, I had an open mind enough, and I went to high school with Luke Walton, and his dad, Bill Walton, was a famous NBA vegan basketball player.
Huh.
So that was kind of my first kind of seed planted, and I remember being like, to me, back in high school or in college, veganism was just more like the thing that my really cool stoner friends were doing,
Yeah.
And so I was like, it was cool, but I was so wrapped up in my world of like just eating for pleasure and wasn't very environmentally conscious in that way yet. So it was more of an ignorance, really.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. Now you say you hit 25, you started to make these changes. So I guess as you were doing the Ayurvedic thing with still some dairy products, you probably saw some improvement. Then you eliminate dairy products altogether, and you saw a lot of improvement. Did this at all frustrate you, having gone the conventional medical route and probably spent a lot of money in that direction? Did it kind of frustrate you that here's this knowledge just sitting here? These guys could have told you this years ago.
Yeah. Well, it kind of spawned. That's what spawned me creating videos. Is that exact issue? Was like, this shouldn't be something that someone has to do 5 years of research to figure out. It's so simple and so basic, and really, if you follow the world of research and information is so impossible to siphon through these days for most people. You can Google something and find a peer-reviewed medical research backing almost any medical claim,
Yeah.
And so for me, what it came down to is how can I, in very visual, real world style videos, show, where I was and show where I am now. There's no third party influence. It's just, here's the facts. Here's how I did it. And if you want my help, let me know and I'll tell you exactly what I did. I wish that was out there 10 years ago when it was all starting for me. But I also, something that I talk about a lot with people is I'm very, very appreciative of my health crisis at 24, 25, because if I would have stayed the way I was, looking somewhat fit but inside really sick, and nothing happened, I could have hit 50 or 60 and it could have been full-blown cancer or heart disease rather than some dermatitis on my skin that was uncomfortable and looked ugly that spawned my whole healthy life. So
yeah, that's a great point. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about after you cleaned up your diet totally, you became fully, whole food plant based. Well, before I ask you that, tell us the name of your channel, website, where people can find you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, my website's called holistichealthactivation.com. It's really, really simple. I have a few ebooks on there that are dirt cheap, and they're just basically recipe books. You can find me. My YouTube channel is just Rob Stuart is my handle, and the URL is YouTube user 40-day activation.
Okay, cool. All right, and when you went whole food plant based, did you find, like it says, like you said earlier, that you kind of feel like you're getting healthier and healthier, and I guess stronger and more fit? So was there a period when you first went whole foods plant based that did you lose a little bit of weight? Did you were you still exercising, or had your illnesses got you to the point where it was like really hard to even exercise? So was it kind of like you had to build yourself back up?
Yeah, kind of a combination of all that. So I'll back up a little bit. For me, the transition from the time I found Ayurveda to the time I actually started healing from eating whole foods, that was like a 5-year period.
Okay.
So there was a lot of experimenting, a lot of trying for 6 months, falling off the wagon. So it didn't happen for me just like snap of the fingers. It was a struggle. But once I kind of finally figured it out, where it was like, okay, it's basically like this simple, and I started eating that way, things started happening quite quick. Yeah,
that's great. And one interesting thing about this is something you kind of communicated with me about. There's a lot out there that's alternative, that's also kind of just making money, and probably not really that healthy. So, and I think this happens to a lot of people. They decide, okay, I'm not going to go the medical route. I'm going to try some of these alternative things. And there's so much hokey stuff out there that's actually can hurt you. It can keep you sick. So it's kind of like you're sifting through this maze of weird stuff. And then you finally come to this thing like you're talking about, where it's just back to basics, very simple, and that's the healthiest thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like I think Doug Graham is the first person I heard say this, but he says being healthful comes from living healthfully, and it's really that simple. If the actions that you do throughout the course of a week are generally mostly healthy, the result will be most likely healthy skin, healthy digestion, not overweight, not diseased human being. It's pretty simple. Doesn't mean it's easy to do, but it's a simple idea, simple concept.
Totally. All right. So for where you are right now, how would you characterize your dietary approach? Would you say that do you eat cooked vegan foods? Are you into the raw scene? Do you mix it up a little bit? Tell us a little bit about that.
I mix it up. I generally stay pretty high carb, and my fat and protein intake fluctuates depending on several factors. One being where I'm living and the weather. Two, I like to a creative outlet for me is changing and playing with the shape of my body. So, for instance, recently I had a paleo friend offer me $1,000 bet that in 2.5 months or 2 months I couldn't gain, I think it was 7 pounds on the diet that I eat, which is a combination of a lot of fruit and a lot of cooked food. My fat usually is about 10%, protein about 10%. I took the bet because I know my body, and $1,000 for me to gain healthy weight is not a problem. So what I did is I bumped my calories up just a little bit, and I bumped my fat intake up just a little to 15, kept my protein at about 10, 11, and hit the weights really hard, and I put on about 19 pounds in 2.5 months. And I have fun doing these things because it shows it. To me, the diet should be based on 2 things for people. What is attractive and actually tasting good in your mouth? And 2, what can you get your hands on that you can afford? So if someone, like I've struggled in the past because I wanted to do raw. I wanted to be like, like Doug Graham and how Durian Ryder used to be, and be a fruitarian badass and just have some greens at night and maybe an avocado once in a while. And I tell you what, if I lived in Costa Rica, I think I could pull that off. I think I would have enough delicious fruit around me that could be ideal. But even in San Diego, where you can get lots of good produce and fruit, I found it much easier to eat as much good fruit as I could, but then eat also a lot of mixed vegetables, steamed or baked over rice or potatoes.
Rob, I love that you're saying that. There's a few places, maybe San Diego's one of them, where you can maybe do it, but it's like Omaha. You're not gonna, in Omaha, you are not gonna get, a case of bananas for like $15 or 10. I mean,
Right. I mean, I could do it. I could do it on, I have a pretty good method of stockpiling bananas, but I don't want to eat bananas and dates
for eternity,
for more than a few days. I've done it and it's been good for my health, but I feel more fully nourished when I'm eating foods that also appeal to me and taste good.
Yeah, I love it. I love just the practicality of it and the kind of balanced quality of it. Yeah. All right. So let me just ask you quickly about supplementation. Is there any supplementation you do? And I'm specifically interested in B12 and vitamin D, or anything else you think is important.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I will supplement. I call it sort of, kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm like this winter, my vitamin D definitely was off because it was the first winter in a long time that I've not been in basically subtropical climate. So I could feel, for me, some of the biomarkers are like my hormone level and my sleep and just the feeling of energy. Am I waking up and like, okay, I'm ready to go. Those things were off, so I supplemented with a food-based multivitamin that had vitamin D in it, and I did a sublingual B12, and I did that for 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off for about a month, and then that was it, and felt that's all I needed. Generally, if I'm in a place where I'm getting plenty of sunshine and eating a really clean diet, I won't supplement unless something bio, tells me, hey, something's a little off, get some help. And I always do it from a food-based multivitamin or a food-based herb. As far as other supplements like protein shakes and things like that, I stick to all whole foods as much as possible, and have found that because of my work not strictly, but really focusing on helping people with the gut, the dermatitis and eczema issues. I found that anything that's isolated form, oil or protein powders or even some of the superfoods that are isolated nutrients, they seem to throw the digestion off for people that are really sensitive for some reason. So I kind of just stick with all whole foods and make it simple,
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Let's see. There's a lot of different topics I want to ask you about. What's coming into my mind directly is what have you learned over the years, and what role has it played in your decision making in terms of ethical treatment of animals?
I'll be honest. For me, like I kind of said growing up, I've always been kind of a combination of being really into movement and athletics, but also having a creative side. And with that, I think I've always had a love for animals. Like I've always had a dog or a pet, or just have been amazed by animals and loved them. I didn't really get into or understand the ethical and environmental ramifications of eating meat until probably 4 years ago. And since then, it's I'll be honest, it's not the number one factor. For me, the number one factor is health first, my health, because if I'm not healthy, I can't do anything good for anybody, for anything. So number one, veganism for my own health. But for two, if you really stop and think about it, and you think about what a vegan world would look like, so many of, and I know I'm sounding kind of like a total like peace on earth, let's just all love each other, but it's true. The amount of food that we could spread throughout, a healthy food for everyone can be an actual option. I think it's that simple, and there's no need to be. I did a piece, actually a video about how to end the drought in California. It wasn't well received. It didn't get a lot of views, but I thought it was a pretty good video. I made it after watching Cowspiracy and back-checking some of their facts about how it takes, and this number is probably wrong, like 10 or 100 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. And just that fact blew my mind. And I instantly understood that all of the water issues in California are due to their agriculture, period. And not even the growing of food, but the feeding of cows.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, Rob. And since you looked into this, you see articles kind of poo-pooing the growing almond trees because of the water they take. But doesn't it pale in comparison to what they're using water for the animal production industry?
Yeah, it's not even a percentage. And even what was even crazier is like in California, you get threatened with like, you can't water your lawn at this time of day, or we're going to turn your faucets off from this time every day. When if you really look at it, the percentage of water usage from humans, even residentially, is like 5 to 10% of the total usage, where the feeding of cows is literally a huge majority of the energy. So it's if you just look at the facts, and you can really see that the dairy, the meat industry causes a lot of issues environmentally, politically, and so there's that component as well, for sure.
It's like a no-brainer once you look at the reality. Yeah. Okay. So two other big topics I'd love to hear you on. I love this fact that your paleo buddy challenged you, and then you just knocked it out of the park and like went over double what he asked you to do. So talk a little bit about paleo. Obviously a paleo diet can be healthier than even some vegetarian diets that are not real conscious. A paleo diet is probably definitely healthier if it's a conscious paleo diet than, say, SAD, the traditional SAD diet. So it seems as though many people will go paleo and they'll see some benefits. And even some people will be vegan for a while, and then they'll go paleo and they think that it's better for them. Talk a little bit about why that might be and why you think it's not superior.
Right. So I'll start off taking kind of an angle about this that most don't. And to me, it has more to do with our conditioning as men and women and what we think we should look like and what health looks like, rather than even a nutritional look. So growing up as a man, reading Muscle and Fitness and looking up to athletes, a shredded, very muscular, big physique was kind of like what you thought was the mark of a man. My He-Man doll was huge, ripped, big, muscular, and almost unobtainable physique. And so anything that you do that brings you closer to having that physique in your mind as a man means it's working or it's healthy. So if you take someone who's doing CrossFit really, really hard and he's eating a crappy diet, and then you put him on a vegetables and meat diet, one that's extremely anabolic, that human being is going to get leaner, he's going to get bigger, and he's going to get faster, and he's going to look even better. That doesn't mean it's healthy. That doesn't mean that that's the best for longevity. That doesn't mean that it's going to help that person be a better husband, a better artist, a better human. It means that that food will help him with a specific goal for specific reasons. That being said, yes, I think the paleo diet is much better than a standard American diet. I think it's better than, it could possibly be better than a vegan junk food diet as far as for pure health. But I think that if you, the proponent here's, I don't even think the argument is a paleo diet healthy, because to me, if people are still under the idea that eating meat and animal products is the top level health, then that I just don't even argue that anymore. It's just it's not even a point for me anymore.
Is that because it would be a waste of time?
It's a waste of time. Yeah. I think the bigger argument is, and a funner argument is, and I think one that we can learn more from is within a whole food plant-based community, what works better and why? Because I've noticed that for me, a high carb, low fat diet works extremely well for my skin and for overall health. But there's people out there that are almost close to paleo macros that are, raw vegans, like Dan McDonald. There's a lot of them out there that, and they seem, Robert Cassar, they seem to be visually looking at them thriving. They look really healthy. They look really vibrant. They've overcome diseases. So to me, that's a more interesting and a funner topic to bring up, is, vegan raw high carb or cooked high carb, low fat, as opposed to comparing to high fat and more, you could say it paleo macros, but just leaving out the animal products. Yeah,
that's interesting. How would you specifically delineate paleo macros? Is it like, what are they? What's the ratio?
So I guess it's kind of like, that would be kind of like saying, well, what's the perfect high carb macros? There's a range, right?
Yeah.
I've seen anywhere from, 50% coming from fat to 70, 80% coming from fat. You have like the keto diet, which is a whole nother mind-blowing brainwash thing which we don't have to cover, but it's ridiculous to me. Is like 80%. It's like a fat, very fat focused diet.
Yeah. It's interesting because, of course, the human organism is capable of operating within a wide range of possible nutrient intakes.
Yeah.
And I guess part of the problem here is you get these long-term diseases. And in a way, paleo is relatively young. So I think we're still going to we're going to have some time while this data comes in, which shows the long-term effects of a high-fat diet. Namely, heart disease might be the most obvious, but what's your take on all that?
That's my basis for eating the way I do is based on two things: my common sense and the research I've seen, which includes really in-depth, maybe not super in-depth, but a good look at people like the Tarahumara Indians, the Okinawans, the Kenyans. These are living human beings that have the longest life expectancy. They are disease-free. They die of old age in their hundreds. That's what I want. So my brain is, the people getting the results that I want, I'm going to study and replicate them. What I see is everyone I know who has had heart issues had a high-fat diet. Everyone I know who has a heart attack, who then continues to eat even a paleo or a diet that has a lot of salmon and healthy fats, has more heart attacks. The people who I've literally seen have a heart attack and then go vegan, high carb, low fat and do it and actually hit, they don't have issues anymore. So to me, it's just what I've seen is enough for me, and what I've read is enough for me. And I've overcome, having a disease on your face that makes you look really ugly is a traumatic and horrible experience. And when you go from living with that to having really good skin, it's you wake up every day kind of like knocking on wood. So I'm like, it works and I'm not going to change it. And the research tells me I'm moving in the right direction anyway. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I like too how you kind of personally just, went through all these different dietary approaches and different, ways of addressing your health so that you have this personal experience and you know what works. I mean, having tried all these different things. Let's see. There's a lot of things I'd like to ask you. When you improved your diet and your health got better, can you characterize? Let's see, what was it? There was a raw food. It sounds like you experimented with raw food for a bit, and then eventually came to a whole foods plant-based, which incorporated some cooked foods. So my question is, did you notice any benefits when you kind of broadened your nutritional scope by incorporating cooked foods and?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll also answer a question that I didn't answer before about what happened to my body during kind of the cleansing process.
Yeah.
Because they both are pretty much the same, relatable. So I went into it where I was like starting to be vegan, and I was seeing some changes. I felt better energetically. My waistline and inflammation was starting to go down. But I realized that with the sickness that I had, the imbalances that I had in my gut, I felt like I just needed to step my game up. So I went basically about 3 months, mostly fruit and green juices, with maybe having an avocado once every 2.5 days. So like basically you're 80-10-10 to a T.
Yeah.
And I experienced a lot of healing, but I also experienced a lot of uncomfortable detox symptoms. Like I was going to the bathroom all the time. I felt a little achy and stiff. I lost a lot of weight. Right now I'm about 185. I dropped down to the 150, 147 at one point. So
yeah.
Quite a lot of weight, and at that
how
time,
how tall are you, Rob?
5'10".
Okay, yeah.
5'10". And at that time, I was doing a lot of yoga and teaching yoga. So, in that community, it was looked at as very normal size, like 5'10", 150. That's just a healthy yogi. So,
right.
And then for me, I got through that 3-month period and wasn't feeling. How do I explain this? If I was to, at that point, only want to meditate, live in a cave, occasionally come out and do some interpretive dance, I would have stayed on that weight and that diet forever. I mean, I could tap into my meditation so fast, energetically so light, but kind of being a person of that realm, but also like to get stuff done and get after it and work real hard. I didn't have the oomph. And I found out that I just wasn't eating enough overall calories. But for me, it's hard to get enough from raw fruit and green juice and avocados. So that kind of led to then broadening out and trying some like more raw food stuff that kind of led me down the street of nut butters and, kind of like your
gourmet raw kind of.
Yeah, your gourmet raw kind of traps that happen, eating like the raw pizzas and going out to dinner at like the raw food restaurants and spending like $80 on a salad, which was fun and cool. And it brought me deeper into the world of, veganism and met a lot of amazing people, but I wasn't feeling optimal. I was feeling better, but I was still having some gut issues. And that just slowly kept trickling to the mindset that I'm at now, where it's just literally what mixed vegetables look yummy, what starch looks good, make the vegetables, make the starch, put them on top, add some herbs, and happy camper.
I like it. Do you, in terms of caloric intake, do you kind of eat until you're satisfied, or have you been doing this so long that you kind of know how many calories you're taking in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So once in a while, like if I'm making a what I ate today video, I'll usually pop it on the chronometer just so that people can see a visual representation. But I generally know I'm eating somewhere between 23 and 2,700 per day, usually on average, which is not a ton of calories. Some people can get away with a lot more and keep getting leaner, but that's just what I eat. I'm very simple, kind of like you said. When I'm hungry, I wait till I'm actually hungry to eat. So when I have when food.
What a novel idea.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's amazing how crazy the body is. So when I'm hungry, yeah, I eat, and when I'm at that point where I'm tired of eating or I'm satisfied, I stop. And then if it happens again, I just do it again. And if that's 4 times in a day, cool. If it's once in a day, fine. On average, it comes out to usually a light fruit meal or a big fruit meal in the morning, and then 1 or 2 more meals after that. Sometimes, more fruit, sometimes 2 cooked, sometimes 1 cooked. Summertime, I definitely eat a lot more raw food, a lot more juices, a lot more fruit, and a lot more water, especially now that I'm living in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, yeah. All right. Tell me a little bit about the yoga you got into. So you were teaching for a while. What styles were you interested in, and perhaps even a little bit about, if you want to get into it, some of the spiritual aspects of that, if you think there are any.
Yeah, well, definitely are. The truth of it is for me is I got hooked on yoga because of what I felt it was doing for me, for my internal world, for my brain, for my spirituality. I liked how that you in the yoga you're basically accessing different parts of your inner world through these movements, and I thought that was a really cool mechanism to entering the body, because I was always ADD as a kid, and what I always noticed was that right after PE or right after recess, that class was always a lot easier for me to sit through and kind of like get into and learn. Realized it because I had managed my extra energy and gotten my body into a place where it was warmed up and ready to sit. That's what yoga is. Those asanas, which is the yoga poses, are a mechanism developed a long time ago by basically like sages, like wanderers, so that they could sit longer. They were uncomfortable sitting, and so they said, well, if I do these movements, then that allows me to sit in meditation longer. So that was kind of the starting point. And then it was, what exactly is meditation? And can I stay in a meditative frame of mind all the time? And so that led me to yoga led me to me, what is the ultimate yoga, which is dance. Like movement, dancing, contact improv, 5 rhythms, ecstatic dance. It's all these different dance cultures in the Bay Area. That mixed with my yoga is what really kind of inspired a lot of ideas about healthful living and food and movement for me. The lineage I was taught was from a school called Purusha, and that's in San Francisco. Where I studied, I got my 200-hour, my 500-hour, and my yoga therapy certification through them, which basically means that I studied asanas and the whole system of yoga, which is 8 limbs, and our lineage was called Hatha yoga.
All right. I think sometimes if people who have not ever taken yoga or don't know anything about it, and they hear that it's this spiritual thing, that kind of puts them off a little bit. And I think even some fundamental Christians think that it may violate some kind of Christian principle. It might be interesting to hear from you why that's not the case.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, because even my parents, my family is like a Catholic family. My mom and dad are very Catholic, involved in the church. And that's one of the things my mom asked me. She was like, well, like you study all these different religions and spiritualities and Buddhism and yogic and Ayurvedic and shamanism, all this stuff. How can you be Catholic or Christian at the same time? Like, how does that work? And the answer is, yes, of course you can. And the other bigger answer is really they all have big similarities. You know, if you were to do like a circle graph, they would have a lot in the middle where they all share. If you take them very big picture, they're all saying the same thing: treat other people with respect, treat yourself with respect, treat nature with respect. There's not a lot more than that, you know. Be a good person. There's an idea of karma, creating heaven and hell, either as a result of how you live or on earth. So, to me, the question's a good one, and I urge anyone who is devoutly Christian or devoutly Jewish, who might be interested in seeking other things but are in fear of being unloyal to their traditions. Here's the viewpoint I come from: is your most Christian, most Baptist, or most Jewish person, a rabbi, a priest, a bishop, will all tell you the same thing. If you believe in your faith, then put it to the test. Do the research, ask the questions, and don't be fearful. Go follow the truth. And if the truth brings you back to your spirituality, then you know it's real. And so I say do that. If you're a spiritual seeker, take it to the fullest place.
Yeah, I love that. And you're making me think of this aspect of yoga, which, you know, you could say our physical bodies are this interface for whatever this is that occupies this body with the physical world. And I think yoga and probably dance too, and probably any kind of physical activity could fall into this category. But I think because yoga is specifically designed with this goal in mind, it kind of gets more directly to it, possibly. But this way that it kind of increases your awareness and consciousness of and within your body, and that can have an effect on the way you interact with the world. I mean, just on the level of health, it's like because it improves your health, you could say there's a beneficial psychological effect. It gives you a more positive outlook, and you just kind of approach life in a more positive way, and you're less susceptible to disease, so that's all positive. But I think some of the perhaps most fascinating aspects of yoga is where your consciousness might move into a different kind of experience with reality than it's accustomed to, and it's a more profound experience. It's deeper. I don't know what the right word is, but it's somehow a progression beyond what was before.
Yeah, and the one of the things that's exactly right, and I think there's kind of 2 points that I'd like to make after you making that statement. Is one, the cool thing about yoga is that the yoga practice is specifically designed for that. And then don't be fooled out there, everybody. The yoga practice is to get you high, super high, but from your own natural. It unlocks a key, just like drugs do, but does it in a natural way of, this is a possibility of feeling this way more of the time. And there's actual biological mechanisms at work, slowing down and controlling the breath, shifts the energy of the brain to the more positive, reflective, open, creative side, one. Combining breath with movement balances the hormones. So you're getting this jolt of relaxation and more energy coming into the body, the blood pressure regulating, the brain chemistry changing, and then you get off the mat and go out into the world. Of course you're going to be, a different human being after that. It's the self-producing health high. I kind of, where I'm taking some of my work and some conversations like with people like you is kind of this fun idea that through intention, you can do the same thing through cycling, through weightlifting, through whatever. If I go to the gym today, which I'm going to go and do some weights later, if I have that understanding and idea that if I create this, if I'm in the moment enough working out and really connect with my breath and the movement of the weights and my body and my breathing and the whole feeling of it, and on top of it, I have this awesome fuel in my body. When I leave the gym, I'm super high, you know, way higher than I was when I would smoke joints and bongs, because it was sustainable and it lasts. So I leave the gym and I'm cleansed, I'm pured, I'm pumped up, I'm elevated. And to me, that's the key is the food and the movement, and you combine those with intention, and it creates a very powerful human experience.
Beautiful, beautiful. Before I forget, what's your take on like alcohol, like say a glass of wine or a beer? Do you totally eschew that, or do you think once in a while it's no big deal?
No, to be totally honest, I don't really eschew anything. My perspective is timing, being honest with where you're at. So, for instance, if I was someone who is in my early recovery process from a gut issue, I wouldn't drink alcohol at all. I'd completely stay away from it. I wouldn't mess with it at all. Where I'm at now, where my health has been in great balance for a long time, and I enjoy being social, and I come from lineages of human beings who drink and party and have a good time, and so when I go out, I'm just very choosing of, you know, what I'll drink. If I'm going to drink, it's usually champagne. For some reason, it's and this has no research done. This is no science backing. This is just putting that out there. For me, it's like, okay, sparkling alcohol. It's just apples. It could be a lot worse. So that's my reasoning. But with that said, I don't know any humans who party on a regular basis who have a really high level of health. I don't know anybody. So I don't drink very often. But when I do on the random occasion, it's usually champagne, Prosecco.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. The other thing I'd like to hear about is the dance. So have you been studying dance, teaching dance, and tell us a little bit about that, because it's funny. I mean, you'll know, you can say more about this, but it's like the public, I think, sometimes doesn't appreciate dance as much as it could. Yeah. Especially there's a spiritual dynamic with dance. And you find references to dance in spiritual traditions, but I don't think it's really embraced as much as it could be. And there's almost like a fear or just a loss of habit or loss of cultural appreciation. What's your take on that?
I think part of it is an aspect of dance for the male community is, for a lot of males, one, they just might not be interested in it, you know, for whatever reasons. There's the homophobic taboo aspect of it, of like it's gay or it's femmy to be into dancing, and then you also have your it's you know, you're not a real man if you're dancing attitude, which for those people, you know, I just kind of feel sorry for. But for a lot of people, also there's just a natural fear of, I don't want to dance in front of people because I might look stupid.
Right.
But for those of us who have, you know, heard that really amazing song in the car and just let the body go, or, you know, with the headphones on in your room when you think no one's looking, hear that song and just makes you have that inner, that just inspiration just shoot from you. That's all dance is. It's just feeling that, and whether it's, you know, moving one hand or completely gyrating your body and doing capoeira, it's just movement, and it's real simple. The kind of how I fell into it was I come from my parents grew up in Nebraska, conservative Catholic white town. They were both really into dance. They like did the jitterbug and kind of what at that time was kind of like the black dancing. So they would go to the wrong side of the tracks on dates to the north side of town, and they'd go to jazz clubs, and they'd do swing dancing and jitterbug, and so that was like my parents. Both of them naturally were just into it. And growing up, I can never remember a time when there wasn't top 40 hip hop or pop music or soul music or like Rod Stewart or whoever playing with the whole family just kind of dancing around and enjoying it. So I grew up in a family that dancing was cool. It was fun. And so I was always the guy that like in the middle school dance was the one out there with all the chicks cutting a rug and enjoying myself. And it wasn't because I was trying to prove anything. It's just, that's just what I knew, and it was an added bonus that there's these cute girls and they like dancing too. And it's like, as I got older, you notice like, wow, it's very sexual and sensual too. In terms of senses, like the senses of the body, but then also it's like dancing with people. It's very sexual. It's very much like the rhythms of sex. And so all of that very interesting to me and kind of pulled me in pretty heavily. And to me, like watching a running back, on TV, make a cut in the hole and spin and dive over somebody is no different than watching a contestant on So You Think You Can Dance, like breaking it down and breakdancing really hard and showing crazy movements of the body. To me, it's just like the human body and watching how amazing it is. It can come in dance or athletics. It's all the same.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that, Rob. All right, man. In closing, I guess we got about maybe 10 minutes if you have the time, but I wonder if somebody was just considering becoming vegan for the first time, what would be like a few basic tips you would give them when they start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's what I wish I would have learned right when I was starting. If someone just would have said to me, keep it super, super simple. Make all of your own food at home as much as possible and focus on eating whole foods. If someone would have just said that, and I would have had more questions like, how do I do that? Or what foods do you mean? But if I would have had that mindset of make my own food at home and eat all whole foods that are vegan, the rest would have been a lot more simple. And so I think that if you just keep it that simple, it's huge.
That's great. That's great. Do you think that sometimes I get a little frustrated with the medical community because it seems to be kind of slow in recognizing these things that you found out. And I mean, we have a community that we're familiar with where it's kind of growing, but it just seems like it's been this long uphill slog to get this into the popular consciousness.
Yeah.
What are some of the factors that you think prevent the medical community from fully embracing these principles?
Oh man, I think that the main issues are so deep at the root of what our medical system is and what, for instance, you have like Dr. Oz and the doctors on TV influencing millions and millions of women and men who are at home during that time, most of which are women, most of which have kids. So they're very influencing middle culture. And you see what they're saying is they're backing whatever kind of pop stuff is going on. And so you have the doctors promoting bacon and eggs and staying away from carbs and that too much bananas. You have Dr. Oz saying too many bananas will give you cancer. So you have some really horrendous misinformation, which is actually, I hate even thinking about it, but when I see things that are that stupid or that against what science and just common sense tells you, then I almost have to think like, is there something going on? Does the meat and dairy industry and all the people that are pushing products have that stronghold of American culture that they're literally handpicking people who will put their message across and putting them in a time of day when it will reach a specific audience? Of course they are, because they know the science of psychology and business. So that part of it is really scary. But the truth of the matter is if you're someone who's watching those televisions shows during the middle of the day and that's what you're doing, I'm kind of not on that level with you anyway. So I enjoy what I call the natural filter that allows me to meet people like you, other people that are sharing, blogging, and what I think all of us really are is we're just students. We're all gaining information and sharing information so that we can kind of help everybody out. I think the more of that goes on in a way that's has the right heart behind it is the key. And the truth at some point will be relevant enough to enough people to where there'll be a shift. And just to hit on the medical scene, the issue with the medical scene, Western medicine, is that they're focused on creating solutions, and they have their system down. If I break my arm, believe me, I'm so stoked that I live in America. But they have no idea about preventative medicine yet. And really, they don't have an idea about it because there's no money in preventative medicine, because preventative medicine means eat your fruit and vegetables, work out, laugh a little bit, and go to sleep on time, and you'll escape 90% of the diseases. So there's no field of study there, you know?
That's so true.
I think that's people in our culture, we want a certification, a system, an authority, when really I think that the way to become healthy is so simple that it's almost, you don't grasp it.
It's interesting and individually empowering. You're taking on your own personal responsibility for your health.
100% agree. I think that is probably one of the most important facts is taking self-responsibility and really figuring out what you need, and then in turn that allows you to then help other people.
Yeah. Did you, Rob, by any chance see this movie, The Martian?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, it's pretty cool. The guy goes up there and he gets...
Yeah, I did see that with the guy from Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And so he grows the potatoes, right?
Right.
And he lives off the potatoes, and I was like, this is so brilliant. This kind of shows you how little resources you need to grow the proper quantity of food. And if we ever go to Mars, they are not going to be raising cattle up there. They're going to be growing vegetables and fruit, maybe. And I just wanted to share this with you. I was listening to a program after this movie came out. I think it was called Science Friday. It's one of these PBS radio programs. And they brought on this scientist dude, and they were interviewing him about the movie and saying, how much of this was scientific. And the guy who's characterized as this scientist says, well, yes, he did that, but a better food source would have been whale blubber. This is the guy who's taught, they've trotted him out as some kind of authority on this.
Right.
I mean, it's like totally clueless, man. But
yeah, it's crazy. But to me, I have friends that are in the science community, and I always tease them. I say, reductive science is a certain type of human brain that you can't look at the big picture. Your brain won't allow you to. So reductive science and holistic science are like the two different ends of the spectrum. And I'm obviously probably way on the holistic big picture side. And the reductive science to me is really fascinating, but to me it hasn't done anything for prevention,
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, Rob, it's a real pleasure, man. Is there anything else you want to close with?
No, I just appreciate you reaching out, and I think maybe what might be fun is just to address the comment I left on the video that actually got us in touch with each other.
Yeah.
One I always like to, you know, admit when I could have been at a higher level. And I read comments that I leave sometimes, and I'm like, man, I could have been in a bad mood and maybe not have been sharing. But where the only point that I'd like to make is really, if someone has a system and they have the abundance to have Vitamix and have dehydrators and food processors and can go to Whole Foods and buy all organic superfoods and fresh macrobiotic, locally grown produce, that's awesome, you know. But 95% of the people who I'm in contact with, that's an impossibility, and it's a pipe dream for them, and it makes them feel like they'll never be able to reach a certain level of health without superfoods. And kind of my message is with the most simple foods, potatoes, oranges, apples, spinach, you can get all the health benefits that you can with those superfoods. And that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And really, a lot of my viewers are like that. And I told the gentleman we're talking about, I told him that when we set it up. But I do think, I felt from him, I think he's got a positive, I think it's a good thing he's trying to do. I do think there's a lot of folks who are scamming and making money. You know, what's this guy, well, I won't name him, but what was his comment that chocolate resonates with your chakras?
I'll say his name. It's David Wolf. You know that, and to me, like, I'm not afraid to say his name because that's something. Durian Rider is very harsh, right? We all know him, and we all remember his early videos where he would just rip up people like Matt Monarch and David Wolf.
Yeah.
I think for my taste, I couldn't do that and feel comfortable, but it made me realize that there are some people out there that are making a lot of money, and they're just selling things. And if you just look at them, you know, look at them, their eyes, their skin, their midsections, and ask yourself, do they look like they're living healthfully? And that's all I say about the matter.
I love it. Very straightforward, very easy solution. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Rob, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for your time too, and it's very nice to meet you.